Just what does it mean to come back here and be able to play or just as an opponent tonight?
Yeah, AZ was good to me, but I'm way happier where I'm at now. It was good to see people. It was fun to play in front of some fans. But for me, I'm way happier in it.
The Indiana Fever's road trip ended in absolute disaster, capped off by a crushing 95-60 blowout loss to the Phoenix Mercury. To make matters worse, 2 more players suffered significant injuries, and DeWanna Bonner stirred the pot by talking trash during her post-game press conference. But in the end, Sophie Cunningham made sure she had the final word. In this episode, we'll break down exactly what went wrong in Phoenix, examine Sophie's determined effort to carry the team on her shoulders, and most importantly, unpack Sophie's explosive podcast revelations, where she finally told the truth about how DeWanna Bonner really quit on the Fever. What she said about professional courtesy and saying goodbye will leave you stunned. If you stand with Sophie, drop spicy Sophie in the comments. Let's dive in. This might have been the single most humiliating loss of the Fever's season so far, if not the most. Earlier this year, they fell to the Atlanta Dream 77-58 and also suffered an 80-61 defeat to the Valkyrie. But this loss, a lopsided 95-60 collapse at the hands of Phoenix. From the opening tip, you could tell something was seriously wrong. In the first quarter, Indiana couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. Shots clanged off the rim, sloppy passes were intercepted, and Phoenix was building a commanding lead before most fans had even finished their popcorn. This wasn't just a sluggish start, it was a total offensive meltdown unfolding in real time. The stats only make it worse. Indiana shot a miserable 34.3% from the floor and went an abysmal 7-for-30 from beyond the arc. To top it off, they committed 22 turnovers, which Phoenix converted into a staggering 42 points. When you're giving your opponent nearly twice as many points off turnovers as you're scoring from deep, you're in serious trouble. At this point, you have to wonder, does this team even practice? Tonight's performance looked exactly like what we saw a month ago. And 3 weeks before that, a complete absence of any clear offensive strategy. On nights when nobody's shots are falling, you need a motion offense or a backup plan. Sure, every player is entitled to an off night, but when Kelsey Mitchell struggles, it takes almost miraculous performances from everyone else to keep the team competitive. Sophie Cunningham delivered that kind of effort tonight. Unfortunately, Kelsey Mitchell had a rough game, and no one else stepped up. To make matters worse, Sydney Colson went down with a non-contact knee injury, sending shockwaves through the arena. Then Ari McDonald began limping from a foot problem. Suddenly, Indiana's already thin rotation was reduced to shreds. Losing 2 key players in the middle of a blowout was like taking a punch to the gut when you're already on the ground. Coach confirmed afterward that Sid's injury was to her left knee, Ari's to her right foot, and further evaluations would be done when they returned home. From start to finish, Phoenix controlled every aspect of the game. They out-rebounded Indiana 44-32 and made the Fever look completely lost on both ends of the court. Every possession felt like Phoenix was playing chess while Indiana was still learning checkers. The Mercury's defensive pressure caused chaos that Indiana never escaped. And while Sophie Cunningham returned to face her former team with fire in her eyes, no one else on the Fever roster seemed to share her emotional connection to this game. DeWanna Bonner had already done the Fever dirty earlier this season, winning in Indiana and acting like the chapter was closed, but the truth is, it goes both ways. You don't think the Fever wanted to return the favor and get Sophie a win on her former home court. Sophie was the lone Fever player who came ready to compete. She scored 18 points on efficient shooting while watching her teammates struggle to find any offensive flow. She fought tooth and nail to prevent the score from getting even uglier. But one player can't outduel an entire team. She hit tough shots, knocked down big threes, and kept battling. But it wasn't enough. This matchup meant as much to Sophie as DeWanna Bonner's return meant earlier in the season, except this time, Sophie had no one at her back. She was the only player giving consistent effort on every possession, the only one getting into competitive exchanges with Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, and Kalia Copper. While the rest of the Fever essentially mailed it in, the arena atmosphere was miserable for Fever fans. You could see the disappointment on their faces as the deficit grew. Making matters worse, the Mercury celebrated every bucket and defensive stand like they had just won Game 7 of the finals. This wasn't simply a case of bad shooting luck. It was a total systems failure that revealed exactly how fragile Indiana's depth becomes when injuries hit. The real fireworks began after the final buzzer. DeWanna Bonner couldn't resist gloating after dismantling her old team. Her post-game comments showed exactly why the Fever are better without her. She put up 23 points and made sure everyone noticed, talking about rediscovering her edge and how much this emotionally charged game meant to her, as if she had just conquered Mount Everest. Early in the game, Bonner hit her first three-pointer in months, then ran down the floor and called Lexi Hall a bum to her face after taking her starting spot. Bonner wasn't just playing basketball, she was putting on a performance. Designed to humiliate her former teammates, she got into repeated confrontations with Hull, stared her down after made shots, and exchanged words with Sophie whenever they crossed paths. Phoenix head coach Nate Tibbetts couldn't praise Bonner enough afterward, describing her veteran spark like it had been waiting months for this exact matchup. Phoenix treated the game like it was deeply personal business. Every made basket came with extra glares. Every defensive stop turned into a chance to jaw at the Fever bench. By contrast, the Fever's focus was on checking in with injured teammates and talking about sticking together through adversity. They spoke about not wanting to see anyone hurt on any team, and recognized that losing Sydney Colson was another hurdle they'd need to overcome. Bonner's performance felt less like basketball mastery and more like someone desperate to prove a point to people who had already moved on. Her exaggerated celebrations stood in stark contrast to Indiana's post-game tone of resilience and unity. The Fever's locker room emphasized overcoming challenges. Bonner's side victory laps over beating a depleted squad. Her 23 points couldn't hide why she never meshed with Indiana's team-first culture. But Sophie Cunningham wasn't done. On her podcast, she called out the real story, and it was worse than anyone expected. She pointed out that when Bonner returned to Indiana earlier, the fan base booed her, which Sophie personally didn't believe in, unless the player left in a particularly disrespectful way. Then came the bombshell. Bonner never even sent a simple text to her Fever teammates when she decided to leave mid-season. Sophie still credited her as a Hall of Fame talent and acknowledged that Bonner was one of her vets back in Phoenix. But her quiet, abrupt exit from Indiana painted a much clearer picture of why the split happened and why the Fever might just be better off without her.